Hi, everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What a wonderful group of presentations. Thank you, OCP, and everyone in the audience. My name is India Oliveira. I am the Sustainability Manager at Star Campus, which, once completed, will be a 495 megawatts data center in Sines, which is just under an hour and a half from Lisbon, so here in Portugal. And we are in the final stages of completion of the first building, and we'll soon start the second building construction phases. All of this with aims in becoming the most sustainable data center in the industry. And in order to do so, we are encompassing every branch of what sustainable development actually means. So environmental mitigation strategies, social synergies, and closing the gap of circular economy. Within the time frame, I will try to explain and demonstrate our very complex carbon model and how we can integrate it into our digital construction model for decision making. So what exactly is driving sustainable innovation? And we have identified that, not surprisingly, it is ESG bonds and populational growth. So stringent legislation actually goes hand in hand with ESG bonds into driving sustainable development. And populational growth increases the pressure, especially and specifically to our industry, in AI and IT demands. So the key practices that we have identified that could account for our role in the supply chain include continuing collaboration between the industry, local stakeholder engagement, increasing circular economy whenever possible, and have continuous supply chain accountability, and last but not least, transparent reporting throughout the whole process. On this last point, carbon reporting has become the prevalent basis amongst policymakers in order to develop good strategy implementation. And while this is where I put a problem to solve amongst the industry. So while carbon reporting dashboards are readily available in the market and are actually very good management tools, we have identified a gap, which is how they can easily monopolize the targets of sustainability goals into one very set, quantifiable KPIs. So the aim of our model is to start by counting carbon throughout the whole design and delivery phases, and beyond the life cycle. So carbon model and reporting is a complex world, and all industries will have to, in some shape or form, adhere to and hold accountable throughout the supply chain. And in the construction and IT departments, it is ever more crucial in order for us to fight the right practices in order to fight climate change. For us, the goal is to become net zero by 2030. And in order to do so, embodied carbon is rigorously accounted for throughout the supply chain, and emissions have been monitored from day one of construction, which is a big step for us. And the first steps in achieving this the first steps in achieving the most promising reductions actually start in the design and procurement phases. So we constantly challenge our design teams and procurement teams with strategies such as implementing a procurement strategy where we account for the entire embodied carbon from all of the suppliers. During the construction phases, CO2 emissions are mainly associated with the machinery, earth movements, waste management, water use, and the office supplies. The operations phase can be defined as a more routinely set of data inputs, such as MOPs, where the emissions are calculated via a linear calculation. And the IT end of life will be accounted for with full transparency amongst the clients, which is also a very important and crucial step towards carbon reporting. In order to fully close the cycle of environmental impact and expedite the mission of achieving net zero, the carbon emissions which we cannot be avoided will be compensated under various local schemes of carbon sinks, thus fully closing the emission scopes. Therefore, our carbon model actually accounts for scope 1, 2, 3, and 4. However, we have been seeing an emerging need within the industry of having a metric or a set of metrics to actually account for avoided emissions. And here I pose a suggestion for OCP in aligning this metric and defining and help guide us into what could be the best practice of reporting and accounting for avoided emissions to truly track carbon. And why digital construction? So why did we think of combining both models, model that tracks carbon and the digital construction model? So actually, the digital construction models such as BIM, Building Information Model, already encompasses the basis for a foolproof decision-making strategy. In our model, we prioritize not only the architectural and engineering solutions, but also how these changes could benefit our carbon pledge, which ultimately comes down to the net zero by 2030. So through design, control, and automation of scenarios, we could close the gap of monopolizing the sustainability targets as a whole and look into our holistic carbon model. As you can see, we identified that the digital model could actually be implemented and tackle two of our 4 branches of our sustainability strategy, so the planet and industry. And I'll explain a little bit further. So our holistic carbon model, it is aligned to 8 of the 17 UN SDGs, UN Sustainable Development Goals, and it aims to close the cycle between the goals in order to enhance circular economy in all fronts. These are where the most prominent challenges can be felt, as the increasing need to fight climate change and biodiversity loss is actually intertwined with the exponential growth of and demand for IT and AI. So sustainable technological solutions must be able to adapt to an ever-evolving industry. So how can we effectively build a model where we combine this construction and our circular economy, which has the embodied carbon within it and makes us effectively good design choices and make challenges throughout the supply chain? So by inputting in 5 simple steps, by inputting the carbon model's requirements, it then identifies points of automation within the digital model and planning out multiple what-if scenarios and cost-benefit analysis, in which the benefits here is obviously our environment and the cost is the productivity and the effectiveness of the project. We can be planning out these multiple scenarios and if essentially we are making an evaluation of the area where the project will be held. This one is a project in Sines, so we did a socioeconomic study and combined that with the digital construction, and ultimately we will have a simulation of the best case scenario of the best possible, most sustainable project. Specifically, this simulation, as you can see, allows us to consider most of the UN's SDGs and other compliance, such as the EN 5600 and the Energy Efficiency Directive, tackling heat reuse. more on how we are combining our sustainability strategies as a whole, so not only looking at the carbon, embodied carbon modeling, also looking at all of the social impacts and EUs and local compliances. So it starts by aligning the strategy, including all social economical studies, the EU compliance and our environmental impact assessment compliance with the bill of quantities of the materials, linking that with databases, internal databases, external and open sources databases. This ultimately links to the platform, and you can see here a representation of the digital model. And what is actually amazing about this model is that you can see the embodied carbon throughout the layers of the architectural layers and the engineering layers associated to the project, and you can then tackle and challenge our engineers, our designers into creating even more sustainable options. And here you can see that this model actually worked. It worked for us, and here we see that based on challenging all of these, the whole supply chain, we were able to reduce our estimations, our emission estimated for 2023 in 16%. And obviously, for net zero target, it is still a long way to go. However, we will be creating all of the decisions hand in hand with our models. And last but not least, I wanted to introduce to you STAR Campus. So here is a picture of our first building in Sines. I will invite you to join and have a look at the website and any questions that might arise. It is the perfect location for a global data center hub, and we are excited to be pioneers of the industry. Call to action, as you recall, in the beginning of the presentation, I defined that there is a need, there is a gap for us to effectively account for emissions as a whole and sustainability goals. So I'm going to put here a question for the audience. How can we have a carbon reporting dashboard which avoids monopolization of targets to achieve a wider sustainability goals? And I invite you to collaborate. This is the most important for us to be effective in innovation and reach our ultimate goal, which is to become net zero, become a more sustainable planet. So I invite you to please engage, and yeah, thank you. I'm on the time.
Thank you, India. Perhaps we have time for a question if anybody is interested. Oh.
Yeah.
Hi, India. Thanks for the presentation. Nice to see you. You have this timeline and call to action for us. Can you outline how people would participate in terms of feedback, emails? Is there a website they should be going to, or just
Sure.
You know?
I left my email here, so on a more direct and personal way, that would be a great way to start, because we are looking into publicizing more white papers along with OCP and other research bodies. So we could collaborate in that way and start a work stream of collaboration between the industries.
Thank you. There was another one over here. Somebody?
Thanks, India. On the scope 4, I know from the healthcare industry they wanted to start getting paid, certain suppliers, on positive health outcomes, and no one could ever figure out how to define the quantitative value of a positive health outcome. So I don't think you can create a positive score for scope 4, but certainly you could imagine a whole life cycle assessment where X embodied carbon of scope 1, 2, 3 per kilowatt hour of service is probably the best way to do it, and then you have best practice and everybody just has to beat it, like PUE, like WE, et cetera. I don't think you can measure scope 4 positively, you have to do it negatively.
Okay, thank you. I don't think that was a question. No, however, I wouldn't disagree. I think Scope 4 is a challenging scope, and it's been emerging, and this is also where we definitely need to define what we can actually use it for, and who is accountable, who actually can reduce emissions and account for those design changes and avoided emissions.
All right, we are at time. Thank you.
Thank you.